Hello everyone, welcome back. So if you've been following along with my channel for the past few weeks, you'll know that I've been working on a Y'shtola cosplay from FF14 for the upcoming FanFest 2023. Currently I already have two videos out, one about how I put together the mock-up and one about how I put together the skirt. So today I'm actually gonna show you how I put together the shirt. So putting together the shirt was actually quite the roller coaster ride. I had originally planned for it to take maybe 2 weeks tops. It took about 3 times that time. Things just kept not quite working out. Like the step-by-step is a little messy, it's all over the place, so I'm gonna try to summarize it in a way that is more efficient here. I've kind of regrouped different aspects of the costume into different categories, and I'm gonna go over it with a voiceover instead of like a day-to-day vlog style. It's something new, but it'll be more organized and a little bit more clear in terms of showing you what I did. So yeah, without any further delay, let's take a look at what we have. I'm just gonna get cozy here and just read off my computer because I have terrible memory. Okay, so for this project, I initially used primarily the same fabrics. Excusez-moi. So for this project, I initially used primarily the same fabric throughout the shirt. The fabric was pretty thin and flimsy. So it needed to be fully interfaced to make sure that it would have some kind of resistance that would allow me to attach things to it, like snaps or eyelets or anything really. If this sounds like a little ominous, it's because it is, and there will be more on that later. If you ever plan on attaching or sewing things to your garment, it's always smart to interface that particular section at the very least, and this includes attaching eyelets, which I marked the placement of using my pattern before moving forward. So the next part I'm going to do is kind of just put the back piece aside for now and slowly start constructing the front pieces into their final state. So if I'm not mistaken, this goes like this. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So I have this one right here that goes like that, and there should be a piece here. Where is it? Where'd it go? Oh, right here. There we go. So those are all my front pieces. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by sewing these two together, then sewing these together. And then when I come to sew like this, I'm gonna put a little bit of an accent here. So in the game there isn't any kind of accent along the front seam, but since this is reality, I figured that adding a little bit of accent would help the seam pop. I also wanted to add some hand stitching to make it look more mended together. I originally thought about doing a crisscross design like in the shirt hem, but decided against it and went with a straight stitch instead. So I switched it out to a straight stitch, and I tried to keep it kind of loose in the sense that I don't want it to be too even, but also still a little bit even, you know? Obviously it's not exactly what she has in the game, but I don't really care about taking some artistic liberty just because some designs don't always translate that well into 3D, and yeah. And here's what the bodice piece looked like. There is a little hem section here that I haven't talked about yet, but we'll circle back to that part shortly. To get in and out of the shirt, I had to design an overlap at the center back where I sewed in a few snaps for easy access. I say easy, but the costume is overall not the easiest to put on or the easiest to remove. So moving on to the collar. So the collar is gonna have a lot of trim sewn and attached to it, so I made sure to fully interface both pieces before sewing them right side to right side and turning the piece inside out. I put in some very small snaps to tie the piece in place. I decided to add some stud pieces at the side to match the ones that appear on the skirt. I did save myself some time by ordering the collar pieces already made and done from Dangerous Ladies. If you're not aware, Dangerous Ladies is a work collective where they 3D model and 3D print different accessories for cosplay. These pieces weren't super expensive and looked amazing, honestly, so I would highly recommend if you don't want to make it yourself. the pieces sewn into place between the bodice and the lining, and I also added a little snap piece under the pendant so it could attach to the shirt. This way it won't shift around. So what's this mysterious lining piece I keep mentioning? The lining is essentially the same pieces as the bodice except mirrored. I did decide to add some boning into the lining to help it prevent from rolling up, especially with the thickness of the skirts that will be at the hips. I have started my lining. I've put some boning into the front pieces and assembled them all together. So the way I do this is that I essentially put a little bit of interfacing. They're like strips of interfacing. I put them where I want the boning to go, and then it's like I think it's called ridgeline boning. I'm not sure, but it's this kind of boning. It's like partially plastic and partially like, no, it's fully plastic. Generally this would suffice, but I did have to revisit this later on for reasons. I didn't film this section, but the lining and bodice were sewn together right side to right side, all around the neckline and center back, while sandwiching both color pieces. Now let's take a look at how I finished the hem. I split the hem finishing into two sections, the left side and the right side. Starting with this section, I had originally planned to have it be part of the main bodice of the shirt. I originally had planned to add in extra volume through the use of inset pieces. The truth is that I was really not happy with the results. Like, it looked okay in the mock-up, but for some reason it didn't really translate well with this fabric. Yeah, it's just not wavy enough. So I cut out that section of the hem and decided to make it its own separate piece that would be sewn in. Using the section I cut out as reference, I slashed and spread it to create more of a spiral shape that would definitely give me a whole lot more volume. I traced out the shape and cut it out with some added seam allowance. I finished the hem of the new piece with an overlock and a 1 cm turn-in before attaching it to the hem of the shirt. I was much happier with the volume of the new piece. Honestly, it looks so much better. So to finish up the rest of the hem of the skirt, I overlocked the full length of the hem before turning it in by 1 cm and top stitching it into place. The other side of the hem of the shirt is also its own piece, explicitly this time. It's the only piece I originally made from a different fabric to mimic the disparity of fabrics found in the skirt. This piece needed to be gathered to a certain length, so I created a separate facing of the length the piece needed to be, and then gathered the piece to match that. The hem for this piece is an overlock with anti-fray, which I talked a little bit more about in my previous video about the skirt. Rather than attaching those two pieces together, I created a series of small buttonholes that then allowed me to weave a ribbon throughout and make it look like the whole thing is sewn together. If you watch my previous video, you know that I've been doing a lot of eyelets to essentially weave this in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my eyelets at the top in matching positions, and then the whole thing is going to be holding with this. Okay, so our shirt definitely needs some sleeves. So for the sleeves, I started by making the cuffs first. The cuffs were made using two pieces to mimic the seam that she has on hers. I did also add a little accent piece in the seam once again to help it pop. The piece was then attached to a lining and turned inside out. I made sure to cut as much excess seam allowance as possible to keep the shape true to form. Yushtola had a big crisscross stitch on her sleeve as well, so once again I had to do a series of buttonholes that would allow me to put in the trim. So as you can see, they matched the one that was on the skirt. For those who haven't already seen my skirt video, it was the last one that I posted, so you could go check it out if you want. But I had used the same trim on there. I think it looks pretty good, honestly. I think this is really giving off a look. The sleeves themselves were made from the same fabric as the rest of the bodice, but I also ended up lining them. So the way I'm doing the sleeves is they have an outer shell. They're made of 3-piece each, but I also cut out some pieces to make a lining because the outer shell is this really like soft, flimsy fabric, but the cuff itself is really heavy and stiff. I was scared it would be like the cuff would be too heavy for the sleeve, so I decided to make a sleeve lining that would be made of the same material as the cuff. I had originally planned to put in an accent piece into the sleeve seam as well, the same as seen in the cuffs. So essentially I have my sleeve here, then I'm using these pieces, I'm sewing them to the side here at about, I would say like 7 millimeters from the edge. And then what happens is it ends up being sandwiched in between these pieces that are going to be sewn 1 centimeter from the edge. So when I turn it inside out, you just end up having like this little piece stuck in between. And that's what creates like the little highlight that I'm looking for here. That accent was later removed because I found it a little too busy. The sleeve and lining are then aligned to each other, wrong side to wrong side, and secured together at both the hem and at the armholes. When attaching the cuff, I'm aligning it right side of the cuff to wrong side of the sleeve. Sewing the 2 pieces together and then overlocking them. The cuff can then be turned inside out and ironed flat, and they'll be facing the right way out. I attach the sleeve to the bodice and lining and overlock the raw edges to keep everything clean. With the bodice mostly finished, it was time to tackle the fur piece. I put the dress on my mannequin and started roughly patterning out the shape I was looking for by using simple green painter's tape. I transferred that tape onto paper and traced out my piece. Now, I really wanted to give my fur some volume and shape. I cut out some foam pieces and using my base piece as semi-reference, started patterning out the piece that would envelop the foam piece to create a sort of padding. I am very much improvising throughout this whole process. I have no idea what I was doing. So now I needed to pattern out the fur piece itself. Using the foam as reference, I started draping the piece over the shoulder and drawing out the shape that I would like for my fur. This piece will sit on top of the padding piece. I cut out all of the padding pieces in muslin fabric. And started sewing everything together, making sure to insert the foam in at some point in the process. The fur piece was cut out, and I highly recommend always cutting your fur upside down using an X-Acto knife. As you can see here, the fur was sewn on top of the padding, and to attach it to the shirt, I used a series of snaps. Some of the last details of the project included putting in some eyelet pieces, as well as finishing the trim that would strap up at the front and back of the shirt. Luckily for me, I had an eyelet applier, which made the process pretty quick, and I had already marked all of the placements for the eyelets. From what I can see here, I have bought my trim to tie the front and back. It's brown, not black, but I kind of like the dark brown because I think it's going to give a little bit of highlight. Though I'm not 100% sold on this, so maybe I will swap this out for something else. Hopefully be done by the end of the day. If this trim doesn't work for what I want, I'm going to switch it out. I'm either going to try to maybe Sharpie it black or switch it out for something else. I'm not sure yet, so we'll see. The trim itself did need some modification. I did end up dyeing my trim darker with a Sharpie. The problem is that the Sharpie itself just kind of kept leaking out, so I had to give the trim a thorough rinse several times over so that it wouldn't stain my skin. The trim at the back had some gems at the ends of each string, so I bought whatever was on sale at Michael's and then just painted them a shimmery purpley gray, and those were the final details done. Alright, so as alluded throughout the video, things did not go very smoothly, and that was entirely due to the terrible quality of fabric that I had originally bought. I don't know how this happened. Usually I buy my fabrics from Fabricville, and I have never seen something this bad quality at Fabricville before. The fabric, even when interfaced, was literally just ripping apart like it was paper. I was really distraught, and I honestly never had anything like this happen to me ever before. So when that started happening, there was really no other options than to just restart the whole thing from scratch, which was terrible. I didn't want to refilm all that. I kind of just got in the zone and focused on remaking it. So the final product is actually going to look a little different than some of the stuff I showed you in the video. So yeah, it's done right now, so I guess we could go and try it on now. So yeah. Here it is. So here's the full shirt done, and I'm not gonna lie, I think it looks really good. So maybe I should go over some things that I changed. I mentioned in the video I removed the accent in the sleeve itself, but kept the one in the cuff. I also changed the fabric itself and the lining fabric, which I used something much stiffer and stronger, and I think that's a good call because it keeps everything really like nicely in place. Other things that I changed when doing it a second time around was this band right here. I switched out to a stretch fabric so that I could more easily move my arms, because the first time it sounded like it was about to crack. So I changed it for something that would be a bit more secure. As mentioned, the fur holds with snaps, which I find very convenient. I can remove the fur part and then just bring the shirt itself to get dry clean. Dry clean only. You don't put this kind of stuff in the wash. It's gonna look like a hot mess afterwards. I guess now people would probably want to see it with the skirt, so I'm gonna put in the skirt and we'll take a look at it all together. Just a second. Here it is. I realized I had forgotten to put on the gem piece, so I added that too. So again, I didn't make this piece. I bought it from Dangerous Ladies. But here it is with the full skirt. Woo! And the tutus underneath to give it that extra volume. And yeah, I think it looks really good. I hope I didn't disappoint, because I had some people in my previous videos look pretty hyped for the results. But yeah, here we are after a lot of hard work and a lot of heartache. At least I'm very happy with how the end results look. I hope you guys like it. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. Think about subscribing. If more people are interested, then maybe this could be something I do on a more regular basis. That's it for today, guys. Bye.